Hi there, it's Llarold, and today I'm going to talk about the fantastic new feature of World of Warcraft Dragonflight, Dragonriding. Let's start with the basics. Dragonriding is a physics-based replacement for traditional flying. It only works in the Dragon Isles, for now, and I think it rules. You unlock Dragonriding by doing the main campaign questline, and you should reach it within 30 minutes to an hour of entering the first zone of Dragonflight. You unlock 4 different Dragonriding mounts while leveling through the 4 new zones, one for each Dragonflight you interact with in each zone, so red, green, blue, and bronze in order. I imagine and hope that a black Dragonriding mount is coming in a future patch, and you can customize each dragon's appearances, and some of them look pretty cool. Blizzard has said they will consider adding traditional flying to the Dragon Isles in a future patch, but their goal with this system was to make it so rewarding that players wouldn't want traditional flying back, and here's my feedback on that. Mission accomplished. Why do I think Dragonriding is so good? 4 basic reasons. 1, it's active, it's gameplay. It feels very modern, like I'm playing a video game that was made more recently than 2005. Flying across a zone isn't just sitting at my computer holding W for 3 minutes. I like that. Also on the 3-minute note, it's way faster than traditional flying. And this is how I think they've made it worth the sacrifice of that old school convenience. I mean, the one perk of old flying is that if I had to travel a really long way across a zone, I could just tap the auto run keybind and go make a sandwich or grab a drink or something. Losing that is an inconvenience. But the increased movement speed is worth that trade for me. Traditional flying peaks at 420% increased movement speed. Dragonriding averages over twice that speed. There's also a meaningful sense of progression, but it's not like the last couple of expansions with player power where they use that exact same line to describe a system where you feel like absolute garbage at the start. You start out super mobile, and then it just gets better and better and better. And finally, best of all, it's account-wide. Once you unlock Dragonriding, you have it account-wide, you have all the dragons account-wide, you have every dragon glyph you've collected account-wide. That's great. Now, I think Blizzard does a really good job of tutorializing this system, so I don't want to go into a boring level of detail here, but I will go over some of the basics and share the big trick that has helped me learn how to stay in the air forever. I probably should have put that in the intro, seems like good clickbait, fly forever. Maybe I'll put it in the thumbnail. Let's start with the abilities. You get 4 active skills and a few very simple passives. The first 2 active skills unlock when you first get your very first mount, and they're important, but they are, pretty simple. Skyward Ascent is the bread and butter of flying, and Surge Forward is a skill I actually don't get that much use of while flying around the world. It can be useful for some of the time trial races. There are some points where you get a forced point of energy back, so hitting Surge Forward to fly through that as fast as you possibly can is just like a little bit of free extra speed, but it's not worth all that much usually for flying long distances. Each of those abilities costs 1 vigor, which is your main flying energy. And by default, you regenerate 1 vigor every 30 seconds while on the ground, or 15 seconds while you have Thrill of the Skies active. Thrill of the Skies is a buff you get while flying at high speed. Note, if you're flying but you're not at high speed, so low speed, you do not regenerate vigor at all. As you complete some of the leveling zones, you unlock a couple of other skills. The first is Whirling Surge, which costs 3 vigor and launches you forward super fast. The initial base amount of vigor you have is 3, that's the initial cap. So this is a very expensive skill. It has a 25-second cooldown. It is a really powerful burst of speed once you have a lot of points in the talent tree and you have access to a really big vigor pool. The cap is 6. And at that point, your vigor will recharge every 5 seconds during Thrill of the Sky, so you'll have way more energy to play with. But prior to kind of those deeper into the progression system points, the value's kind of limited. It's very expensive early on. Now, some of the more skilled players have come up with routes where they can pick up all 48 of the dragon glyphs in a single flight and be done with collecting all of them in under half an hour. So This isn't like a long-lived progression system where you have to spend months grinding it out, but, you know, maybe if you're not prioritizing that while you're doing the leveling experience, Whirling Surge might not be that useful to you. It certainly was my experience with it. Later on, you unlock Bronze Time Lock, which is a spell you can use while on the ground. It locks your location in time, and you can reactivate it to teleport back to where you were at the time you cast it. This is a good safety net, but it's probably the skill I've used the least of the three because it's the most restrictive. You have to plan ahead, but it is a really cool concept. I had written cold concept in my notes here. That seems like an autocorrect. It's cool. Okay, let me just show off this talent tree very quickly. The talent tree is pretty well put together, I feel. Rather than running through all of it, I'll just say, if you've done the mini deaths of Chromie, or if you remember Horrific Visions from BFA, this talent setup will be familiar. If not, it is extremely straightforward. You unlock points for it by touching dragon glyphs around the Dragon Isles, and you only have to touch each glyph once for it to be unlocked for all the characters on your account. When you get near a glyph you haven't collected yet, your dragon will make like an audible roar in-game, and you'll have a buff indicating that a dragon glyph is nearby, and it even says how many yards away it is and gives like a very basic hint about where it's at. There are 12 glyphs in each zone, so 48 overall, and I will link a map to all of their locations with TomTom waypoints in the pinned comment. Basically, this talent tree forces you to take all the points in it, which I actually think is very good. It means you don't miss out on any of the cool powers or the cold powers. The only real recommendation I have is that whenever you have the choice between options, you should take points that increase your vigor and your Thrill of the Skies vigor recharge rate first, because that's the most important aspect of staying in the air forever. Okay, hopefully this video is right around the 10-minute mark, because you may have noticed that until I showed off the talent tree, there wasn't a single cut, and that's because I wanted to show off that I had been in the air for over 10 full minutes. I wasn't doing this with 0 talents. I had the first, 2 talents unlocked, but that only takes 4 glyphs, I believe, and you can get those in the first few minutes of unlocking Dragonriding. I mean, the first one, after you've done the first set of quests and ridden to the Skytop Observatory or whatever it's named, and you're standing next to the talent lady, the first dragon glyph is 20 yards above you. Other than those glyphs that I'd picked up, while leveling through my way to 70, I hadn't gotten any others. I hadn't gone, searching around for them. I hadn't looked at the map of where they all were and said, oh, I'll go get those. I just got what I got while leveling. The main way that I managed to stay in the air is using Skyward Ascent. It is keybound as 2 by default, but you can also cast it by pressing the spacebar. I kept hitting it on accident while trying to use Tiger Palm, so I just picked it up and threw it over on the far end of my keybar or action bar, and I never touch it with the default keybind. I just use spacebar. Skyward Ascent is your core skill in Dragonriding, and it's how you will stay aloft over long distances. At a couple of points in this video, I think I even managed to climb up mountains without landing, and again, that's all in Skyward Ascent. The secret to using Skyward Ascent effectively is to tilt your camera up as soon as you start to flap upwards. You don't want to do it too early. If you pitch up before you hit the spacebar, then you'll lose all of your momentum and you'll basically come to a screeching halt in the air. You want to fly upwards and pitch up in a single smooth movement and then not go too far on the angle either. You only want to go up about 30 to 45 degrees. You fly upward for about 1.5 seconds or so, and then as your Skyward Ascent is coming to an end, you smoothly level your camera back out to flat 0 degrees even with the ground, and now you're way higher in the air. You should be moving a lot faster than you were. If you're doing this from a dead stop like I did at the very start of the video, just jumping straight up in the air with 0 momentum, you may need a couple of energy to get going, but again, I wouldn't use Surge Forward. I think that that's bait. You want to Skyward Ascent once, get up in the air, then use that to let yourself fall back down and get a little momentum going, and then use that momentum in a second Skyward Ascent cast to get yourself way up in the air and moving forward at a good speed. Then you can fly all around the world from there. And finally, just to conclude with a plug for this really awesome Weakaura I'm using, I didn't make it. It's from a Weakaura developer named Darian. It's still under construction, and I don't think it's mandatory, but it does help track your vigor and your move speed, and I found that useful. It was previously tracking your pitch angle, but Blizzard has killed that functionality, maybe permanently, maybe only temporarily, don't know for sure. I will put a link to it in the pinned comment as well, and shout out to them, really good Weakora, very impressive. So that's Dragonriding. It's literally my favorite expansion level feature Blizzard has ever implemented. I hope they add even more onto it in future patches, and they have talked about maybe carrying it into future expansions, and I really hope they do. It rocks. I love flying. I've always loved flying in WoW. The last 8 years of WoW have taught me that the choice was between this and riding a ground mount for the first year of the expansion, and I'm taking this 100% of the time. But I would also take this over traditional flying too, because I have a need for speed. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.